Emil, it's Emil Guillermo, L-L-Y, Guillermo. The Filipino way, not the colonized Guillermo, Spanish, or the Americanized Guillermo. Oh, there's Emil Guillermo. No, Guillermo. Emil Amok to you. Emil Amok's Takeout, the name of this program. You know, we start at 2 p.m. Pacific Live, and you may have noticed it's not 2 p.m. Pacific, Emil. It's like 1:56. Ha! You've discovered it. This is the lanyap. This is the something extra. You know, usually I come on and I'm in a good mood. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. Then I was reading something a friend wrote on Facebook about her father and about mental health, and it saddened me because it's a sad story. It was actually very positive because she dealt with something that Filipinos, Asian Americans don't want to talk about. Mental health. Had to do with the death of her father and her coming to terms with it. And it really touched me because it's a close friend, and she's turned to me for a couple of things throughout the years. And it just is one of those things where you understand that Asian Americans, that special, and look, I'm Filipino American. I know we don't talk about mental health. We just choose to live it. But sometimes it's just best to not be cowed by the stigma, by leaning in, embracing, understanding, and then maybe we'll get to helping solve, the crisis that is mental health in our community, which is really just that no one talks about it. And generally speaking, Asian Americans don't like to talk about things. We are generally quiet, which is why one of the most important things that I can do in the remaining years of my life is just do something like this. I mean, I've been a talk show host. I've been on the radio, on TV. I've written, but sometimes using a democratic tool or a tool of democracy like the internet to do what I call the micro talk show. And I mean micro. I got what, a handful of people, maybe if I'm lucky, listening. The micro talk show of the AAPI and the AAXs. And if you're neither of those groups, you're just an ALL. Maybe you just identify as, you're all of the rest of you. And it's important because, what is it? I mean, here's the thing about identity politics, about identity, period. You choose your identity, and because of your identity in this society, sometimes it creates the mental health issue that we don't want to talk about. Often. Oh, you're an Asian. Oh, you're a Filipino. Tell me about whether you feel like you belong, you feel inadequate, you feel like you're an imposter, you feel like so forth and so, you feel shame. All that is part of mental health. And how do we usually deal with that? We usually deal with it by saying, I know, if you're Filipino like me, go see the priest. Our problems just got exponentially worse. Don't see the priest. He's going to tell you to do 10 Hail Marys. Don't see the priest. See a mental health person. But we don't do that. We're not part of the worried well. We don't do counseling. I've done some meditation. I'm not perfect. I know that. But I know meditation has helped me. And if you are regularly listening to this show, if you hang out till the very end, and this is a micro talk show. It's not like a 3-hour or 4-hour talk show. It's less than an hour most times. But if you get to the end, there's a little way to deal with mental health that you get a little hug of compassion. And it's another reason why I do this. But so I get my friend's story, and it's sad, but ultimately positive, because she comes to terms with it. Her father's death. She shares it with her son, and she shares it publicly. And the upshot is, this is something that we as a community need to acknowledge and embrace, because that's how we get better. And I'm not just talking about the Filipinos. I'm talking about all Asian Americans. I've always said that my father, who came in the 20s, what kind of mental health issues did he have? And what kind of resilience did he have to develop in order to defeat all the things that he may have undergone coming to America in the 1920s, in the Depression, from a colonized Philippines? Great, no green card needed, but he came to America. What was his mental health like? And wasn't it amazing that he lasted throughout all those years as a bachelor, because Filipinos couldn't intermarry. Filipinos, there were anti-intermarriage laws. They couldn't mix race. They couldn't own property. They couldn't vote. What kind of mental health did they have? Think about that sometimes. And then you wonder about why we are the way we are, right? I mean, the legacy continues. Sometimes by talking about it, I mean, look, there are Asian American mental health professionals out there, and I've talked to them on my podcast, on my show. They say the number one problem, stigma. No one wants to acknowledge it. No one wants to talk about it. The shame. Heck with shame. Stay till the end of the show. We'll deal with your shame. We'll give you a self-hug and a little bit of compassion and send you on your way. But it's a lot better than ignoring it. So that just sort of got me in the right mood, is getting my friend's story. But that, like I said, it's a positive story, because we, as they say, are leaning in, right? Acknowledging it and understanding that we can create space for it. We can create a bigger space. And guess what? As the space gets large, we get bigger and the problem gets smaller. And then we can live our lives. Right? So welcome to our program. This is Emil Muck's Takeout, as I say, the micro talk show. Of the AAPI and the AX. We talk about the stuff that people don't usually talk about. Asian American stuff, Asian American mental health. Who talks about that? On the agenda today, I want to talk about the apology for Ilhan Omar. There's no apology. Representative Boebert, who called Omar, or implied that Omar was a suicide bomber. My goodness. And you wonder why, we have all this kind of hate now that we see in society. Stop AAPI Hate puts the number of transgressions now at 10,000. We're at 10,000. I used to say 9,000. We're at 10,000 now. Just today, you had a shooting at a high school in Michigan. Details forthcoming. Let's see what they say. I mean, it's just sad. You don't want to talk about it really, but 3 killed. Shooting at Michigan high school. 15-year-old taken into custody after firing a semi-automatic weapon. Oxford High in Michigan. I mean, you can't expect that we can have the things that we have, like politicians behaving badly. You know, one member of Congress calling another member of Congress a suicide bomber. Oh, I'm joking. Boebert, Representative Boebert, may have been joking, but she is a political leader. And they give up their right to joke. I'm sorry, they just do. When you create policy, you give up that right to be flippant because people look at you and you're a model. And I say, oh, Emil, that sounds so harsh. She has freedom of speech. Yeah, well, you know, it's going to destroy the joke, but you have to start everything with, I'm telling a joke now, and then tell a joke. And then, of course, there's no surprise and no one laughs. And then she has to end it with, that's a joke now. And then she says, why did I ever bother to call her a suicide bomber? That's not funny. She should have just said that in the first place. But Boebert, Colorado, you know, thought you could play it coy, appeal to the base who love that kind of stuff. Because I guess the towel head jokes are old, right, Boebert? Call her a suicide bomber instead. So Boebert sort of apologized, but said she was saving it for a phone call. Ilhan Omar was on in the press in Minnesota saying that phone call was bogus. She didn't apologize, and Ilhan Omar ended the call. I've talked about how to deal with apologies. If you are going to do a transgression against an Asian American, you need to spell it out. And it cannot begin with, if you're a Muslim who was offended. It cannot start with that. If you were no, bad. You cannot say, compartmentalize your apology. You can't say, if you didn't like what I said and didn't laugh, I apologize to you. You can't say that. Because what about all those other people who are laughing at the fact that you are giving a fake apology? Because that's what you're going to tell them. You can say, I didn't really apologize to her. I was fake. I faked my apology. Couldn't you tell? I can fake everything else. Like, ask my husband. Do you see how ridiculous that is? So any apology that starts out, if you were offended. No, here's the only kind of apology it works. Not the compartmental, specific, if you were kind of thing. The only apology that works after a transgression, like calling Ilhan Omar a suicide bomber, or any other transgression against an Asian American or a person of color. The only apology that works is, I said a stupid thing. It went out to everyone. And whether you were hurt or offended or not, if you just heard it, if you heard what I said, see, it's got to be blanket, it's got to be universal, and you got to say, if you heard it, I was wrong. I was stupid, it wasn't funny, and I apologize, not just to the people I hurt, but to everyone. Because I have just made everything bad. I've muddied the water. I have made people think that it was okay to say that. It is not okay. It is not okay to talk about a fellow member of Congress, another political leader, and say, she's a suicide bomber. Ha, 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 ha. No. And then you say, and for that, I apologize to everyone. That's the only apology that works. That's what Boebert, Representative Boebert of Colorado, who told that joke about Ilhan Omar. That's what she should have said. She didn't say that. She did that half-ass apology, and then she said, I'm going to call Omar. And Omar said today in the Minneapolis papers, hey, you know, Boebert, she didn't apologize. In fact, she doubled down. So shame on her. And I guess it's time to strip Boebert of her committees, just like they stripped all the others who have said things like, oh, white supremacy, not such a bad thing. Or Gosar the other day, oh, killing AOC, Ocasio-Cortez, not a bad thing. Threatening Biden with a sword, even though it was anime, sure it was a joke. No, it wasn't a joke. That's what we got to fix. We need apologies, and we need another sound. Looks like we need another censor of Representative Boebert of Colorado. I was open to see, well, maybe she's going to apologize, but apparently, according to the Minneapolis Tribune, Ilhan Omar says Boebert didn't apologize. The next thing I want to get into is it's related. You know, we take these comments, these jokes seriously because of, you know, the number of expressions of hate, transgressions against Asian Americans since the pandemic, 10,000. So we got to take them seriously. And, you know, when you talk about the big daddy of Asian American hate crimes, the Vincent Chin case, well, every time there is a hate crime, you got to think about Vincent Chin. I mean, I talked about on my ALDEF blog, on my ALDEF column, my Emil Guillermo column, I talked about how Arbery, how I just want to savor justice. We got justice in a huge helping for Thanksgiving. And I want to live on the leftovers for a long time. That justice is not easy to come by. I mean, we don't get it often. When we see it in the way we did with Arbery, with a nearly all-white jury, my God. And Asian Americans know how hard it is to get justice because look at Vincent Chin. 40 years next year. No justice. Still, no justice. Not in the criminal case, not in the civil case. And all we have, I've always said this, all we have is a story. Now, Chloe Zhao, the director of the Oscar-winning Nomadland, I saw that. I didn't see her recent one, the superhero one, which is sort of like, yeah, some people liked, some people didn't like. But I loved Nomadland. I love Nomadland that every time I drive on the road, and I don't drive that much in the pandemic, but I do drive and I say, wow, look at that. Or whenever I see an Amazon truck, I say, oh, look, there's that's a Mercedes Sprinter. I got to get one of those. Drive all around the country, right? Nomadland. Thank you, Chloe Zhao. And I just think that they couldn't have picked a better director to tell the Vincent Chin story. She was picked by Helen Zia, who's the executor. Look, I love Helen Zia. Helen Zia has been a long-standing friend of mine. And she's told me stuff about the case that is mind-blowing. You know, and I've written about it in my blog or my ALDEF column years ago. You go and look up the column in the podcast that I did. Because Helen knows, you know, it's journalism. I asked her a question. She told me. I asked her one of the surprising things. She said, you know, in 82, when the crime occurred, people did not see Asian Americans as part of the Civil Rights Act. they did not see that civil rights was really, something that included Asian Americans. It was a black and white binary thing. And when I talked to her, this was like 4 years ago, I was stunned. And I was talking to an African American friend of mine the other day, and I said, Asian Americans aren't, it's just recently that Asian Americans have been seen as really being a part of the civil rights struggle. I mean, you can say, oh, come on. They've always been a part. Well, 1982, Vincent Chin, the people in Detroit advocating for Chin, had to practically, they didn't have to go to court, but they argued with the local people there, civil rights lawyers. They had to go to the national offices to say, yeah, you're right, Asian Americans, you are part of this. I'm telling you. The binary black-white thing is a recent, within the last 30 years, where it's been seen that Asian Americans are really, in fact, part of this. So now we have Chloe Zhao, who, she's gone through all this stuff with Beijing because they don't like the fact that she won an Oscar. There's all sorts of things after she won that Nomadland Oscar. She's an American. She went to school here. Well, I don't know about her status. I believe she still is Chinese. But she did her major growing up here in America, went to school here, both undergrad and I believe she went to USC. But she, for her personal reasons, maintains her Chinese citizenship. It's just, I think because she is such a gifted director, it's going to be interesting to see how the Vincent Chin story is told. 2022, I guess it'll come out. And Helen Zia, who is the executor of the Vincent Chin estate, has made this exclusive and made this is the official story. So we will see the official story. And God, it's about time, isn't it? 40 years. And we're just coming to grips with this. I just think it just says how we're in this struggle and the struggle goes on. And how, we make inroads. We have a little flash here and a little flash there, but still we have so far to go. And then we have new people coming in, which is great. But some new people are connected to the past, to civil rights, to all the things that happened in the 60s and the 70s. But you come in 2010 or even 2000. And what is your sense about an Asian America? One of the ongoing struggles about a community that is constantly replenishing and recycling. And it speaks to the idea that we need to hear these stories. We need to hear them in history. We need to hear them in news. We need to hear them everywhere. Because when you don't hear them, when you don't see them, you are reasonable in asking the question, do we exist? Do we matter? Do we count? That's another reason why I do this. I don't, it doesn't matter. I don't need like 1 million people, 500,000, whatever. I don't need that. I don't need a couple hundred. I just need it to be out there. Because it will touch the people it'll touch. People need to hear this. But that's why I call this the Asian American Micro Talk Show. Because I talk about us Asian Americans. Like we matter. So looking forward to the Vincent Chin, Chloe Zhao, Helen Zia collaboration. It's going to be a limited series, I believe, according to Deadline. And so who knows? Who knows when it will be following it? But yeah, I just think they couldn't have picked a better person, better time to tell that story. 2021, 2022, Chloe Zhao. Boy, that was Nomadland was a great film. Frances McDormand captured that sense, isolation, loneliness, and really that sense of how you shouldn't be fearful of each other, right? That it's a perfect pandemic film. As we isolate, we're watching the film about isolation, or people have to come together as community. Makes me want to go out on the road. What else? We talked about Ahmaud Arbery. So many cases now. I don't know which is my next elective in TV trialdom. Am I going to follow the Ghislaine Maxwell case and see just how bad Jeffrey Epstein was? Although they're trying to make a case that Ghislaine Maxwell is not Jeffrey Epstein. But Jeffrey Epstein, he took the easy way out. He could have been the worried well. He could have sought something to help ease whatever made him take his own life. But I guess he figured that was the best way for the things that he did. It was sort of self-execution. But so here's Ghislaine Maxwell's trial. I'm not as interested in that, although it is interesting in terms of how people get caught up in that trafficking and how both sides. It doesn't sound like Ghislaine Maxwell really accepts the fact that she was doing what she was doing for Epstein. So there's that case. There's the case of Jussie Smollett. You know, I brought that up recently when Suni Lee made some accusations about how she was accosted. I don't doubt her. She has all the credibility in the world. In my mind, she's an Olympic champ. But she didn't file a police report, I don't believe. And Jussie Smollett filed the police report. And that may be his undoing, because subsequent to all the hubbub, it was revealed that he was trying to get some publicity for Empire, the show he was in. He was enlisting the aid of two guys to come, beat him up. And he had to do some acting. He's claiming he's not guilty. Given all that's come out before, I don't know how he can make that claim, but it could be interesting. So there's that trial. And then there's the trial of let's see, I got to get my glasses here. Of Elizabeth Holmes. I have not been following the Theranos case, but apparently Elizabeth Holmes recounted from the witness stand Monday how she had been raped while studying at Stanford. That should have pleased administrators yesterday. And not long after, entered into an abusive relationship with the man who would become her top deputy at Theranos Inc. And she's talking about Ramesh Sunny Balwani. portrayed as a man who berated her, sexually abused her in the bedroom. The bedroom they shared, and dictated a punishing lifestyle consumed by workaholic sex. Now, when that trial began a few weeks back, I thought, oh, maybe I'll get into it. And I thought, I'll just wait for the highlights. We got a highlight now. Holmes testifies she was raped at Stanford. I know I might dive in, but somehow, what kind of credibility does she have after everything that's been said? She's got to say that she was somehow mentally in a different space so that she couldn't make the kind of decisions. I don't know. Does she have credibility here? She says she was berated. I don't know who raped her at Stanford. She doesn't say, but she does name this Asian guy, Sunny Balwani, which, okay, in a negative way, it's sort of like, God, you Asian guys, look at what you did to Elizabeth Holmes. You mashers, you. I know there are some people in the community who might be saying, oh, wow, point for bad Asian American manhood. But we'll see. I don't know if I'm going to follow that. But see, this is in terms of Asian American males. This is the area of real Asian American power now. Who took over? Who took over at Google, right? But you got the engineer, Parag Agrawal, who in stories today, Jack Dorsey, the bearded, enlightened guy, turns to the engineer, Parag Agrawal. And some people say, well, maybe they'll make Twitter better, like they should have years ago. But Dorsey got kind of taken off, off focus, going off with the Square and then the whole censorship thing with and the politics with Trump, going after Trump and the conservatives. I think that really was one of the things that made him feel like, oh my God, I just want to make money off the internet. I don't want to create a platform. I don't care about people's free speech. I don't care about Trump. I just want to make my billions. Yeah, well, in the meantime, people were saying, whoa, Twitter's not making enough money. Twitter's not even as good as Snapchat. I mean, people, and yet old people like me, we've sort of been turned off by Twitter somewhat. I mean, I was turned on by it, but it's just too much. And then I went away, and young people didn't, glom onto Twitter. And so Twitter's in a generational crisis. They need an engineer like this guy, Parag Agrawal, to kind of change its fortunes. But so these are the Asian American images now of Asian American male success. We got the guy, Sunny Balwani, who Elizabeth Holmes claims abused her at Theranos, made her feel bad, made her feel mediocre. And then we've got Parag Agrawal, the engineer, who is being given a role that engineers don't normally play. He's being given the role as savior. He could save the company, save Twitter, have it make more money. And then there's one other image in the news today, which is sort of like, this is an Asian male thing now. The Asian American internet baron, right? Microsoft chief executive Satya Nadella made the headlines today because he sold half his shares in the company last week, according to a federal securities filing. He sold 838,584 shares over 2 days, and it yielded more than $285 million, which I guess means he's going to buy that house in Woodside or maybe put in the pool. Or I don't know, is it Woodside or maybe he lives up in Washington? I don't know. But that's 285 million that he got for selling his shares. And I'm telling you, that really is what I would say is, that's the Asian stereotype. It's not the Asian American reporter. It's not the Asian American talk. It's not the Asian American actor. It's Asian American tech billionaire or multi-millionaire. So that's who we follow. That's who you got to follow their every move. They're in the news. Microsoft. Microsoft has actually changed. I think Microsoft is better since Gates. Although I don't know. Microsoft 11. All right, I've come this far and I've not mentioned Omicron. But I do want to mention, because I was a journalism professor. Adjunct. That means I was a junkie journalism professor. The New York Times wrote a good lead. Today's paper, Tuesday's paper, on Omicron. Divergent plans, hobble response, and variant fight. So it really gets to the core of the problem. That so Biden puts on a travel ban, maybe to buy time, but other countries are putting on travel bans. Interesting. The Philippines, which has enough coronavirus problems of their own, they've got a travel ban, which I guess is just like jumping on to, we're going to ban, people don't know what to do. And I think it means that we need to think about some kind of global authority, not just ones that exist that, they'll chime in when they want. We're going to need something more that has the authority to say, this is good, this is bad, we shouldn't do this. Divergent plans, hobble response, and variant fight. Familiar cycle repeats. Nations pursue a jumble of border closures and travel bans. And this is what, it's the lead. It's always the lead. And this is a good lead. It's Dateline Rome. In a wrenchingly familiar cycle of tracking first cases, pointing fingers, and banning travel, nations worldwide reacted Monday to the Omicron variant of the coronavirus in the piecemeal fashion that has defined and hobbled the pandemic response all along. That's a good lead. It really just captures. We don't know. What are we going to know? Do we want to panic? We don't want to panic. I remember the first days of the pandemic in March 2020. Do you remember? I was in LA at a conference, and now is coming home. The conference had ended, and Donald Trump was trying to keep a lid on things. Now, there's got to be there's a wide difference between, or there's a good bit of margin between putting a lid on things, not telling people what's going on, and telling people everything that's going on. Yes, we want transparency. No, we don't want to put a lid on things. We want to tell people what we know. But we also need to figure out where's that middle section where we let people know that, hey, we're on top of it. We're going to get to the answer. No need to alarm. I guess Joe Biden tried that yesterday, But people are still alarmed. People are still saying, oh, we don't know. Look, there's only one answer. Get vaccinated if you haven't been vaccinated. Get the booster if you got your vaccinations before June, because then you're qualified for the booster. Everyone should get them. The latest now is that FDA panel endorses Merck's COVID pill for high-risk adults. I mean, everyone's trying to jump into the idea that, okay, we need help. Because if this gets worse, we need all the tools, all the therapies that we can get to fight this new variant and the pandemic in general. But no need to panic. I think that's the best thing. No need to panic. Remain calm. Be calm. Get vaccinated. Get boosted. Stay masked. Keep your distance. We'll get through this. We will. We'll get through this. We have to. I'll stay in my closet. I'll talk to you. We'll get through this. A couple other things I want to mention. I like Chris Cuomo. I like Chris Cuomo's show on CNN. And his name comes up because the Attorney General in New York released files that show the testimony of his brother Andrew, then the governor of New York, how his testimony, and it showed also the statements of the women who were among the accusers. But the big story is whether or not Chris Cuomo helped his brother. I mean, that's the story that comes out. I mean, everyone's talking about the other things too, but in news, people are wondering, did Chris Cuomo cross the line when it looks like now, according to statements and emails, that he went to his sources to try to help his brother and that he offered his services to help his brother in PrEP. The key is we're going to see how many people really hate Chris Cuomo. Because just from the descriptions I read, I don't think there's anything that says he did something truly wrong, which is, here's the line. It says, I'm a Cuomo, so I will not report on my brother. I will not report things about my brother because I'm biased. That is the line. He kept the line. It doesn't mean he can't do these other things as long as he's not reporting on his brother. I mean, that really is, if you're going to be fair-minded, that's where the line is. To me, it didn't sound like he crossed the line. What it sounds like, though, as people bring it up, is people will play journalists with a capital J and say, oh, Chris Cuomo is an anchor at CNN. More should be expected of Chris Cuomo. When Chris Cuomo does something that calls into question all of CNN, he hurts CNN. Therefore, he crossed a line, a different line. But you watch. I mean, there will be people, the anti-Chris Cuomo people will say, oh, look, he's terrible. He's unethical. But the people who see where the line is, here's the line. Did you report on your brother? No. Okay, good. You're cool. Did you help your brother? Well, you can help your brother. He's your brother. But did you help your brother and then report on your brother? No, I didn't. I helped him. I didn't report. Okay, if you didn't report, then because we're a news agency and that's the line. Most people say, well, we're going to pay you a couple $1,000,000 to do the news. You should do all of the news. You can't just say selectively. So there'll be some people making that argument. So I hope that Chris Cuomo is well liked at CNN. I think he is, but He's got a high-rated show there, but you never know. As they say, the long knives will come out. I like Chris Cuomo. I think he's good. I know some friends of mine disagree with me, but I think he's sharp, and I think he's defined the line. As long as he doesn't report on his brother, he should be fine, but we'll see. All right, tonight the Warriors play, but I want to mention sports as we end this because, I want to end it in a nice, lighthearted thing. Not light, but in an enjoyable thing because people might think, oh, Emil, you just think of the news all day. No, I think about the news because news is life. And this is the problem when you're a journalist or, that was your life, covering stories, paying attention, watching the wires, just like the teletypes, and just, following it like it's a heartbeat. It's a curse, right? It's like you feel alive. And as the news passes, you say, I got to talk about that. Got to comment on that. Including the sports. And that's why the Warriors, they're the best thing in sports right now. Football, it's a kind of like everyone can beat everyone else on a given Sunday now. It's not as interesting in a way because there's no one dominant good guy king. And now that Aaron Rodgers has lied about the vaccine, I don't like. He's all right, but he's not my favorite anymore. When I played, what was it? Fantasy football years ago, he was my favorite because Aaron Rodgers could always be counted on for like 20, 30 points. He had a good week. But now I'm not as high on Aaron Rodgers. But Stephen Curry, the article in the Wall Street Journal, Stephen Curry, they call him the Roger Federer, the guy who can do no wrong in any arena. He's the guy. They're playing tonight. They're playing the Suns. The Suns are like maybe the second best team. And I don't think it's going to be close because the Warriors are that good. They blew out the Nets. They were in a sluggish game against the Clippers and ultimately blew them out. They're the kind of team that if one guy says, oh, I'm going to put together a super team and I'm going to put together all the people who are like stars. And the Warriors even tried to do that at one point. And they do well. But this is a team that's just put together by, with people who are just good and coming together. They are great. And that's the kind of super team that I think if you look at them, you say, you admire that because the winning and losing part is off the table. You don't have to sweat that. Oh, they're going to win. Okay. But how they win, how this great super team wins, that's important. No, it's just fun watching the Warriors. It's just fun watching basketball. And I say that after coming off a really great World Series where the Giants won the most. They weren't in the World Series. They won the most games in in baseball, but they couldn't get to the series. They were like a couple pitchers short, and they just lost Kevin Gausman. Gausman signed with the Toronto Blue Jays, which I'm saddened by, happy for my friends in Toronto, but God, Gausman was good. When he was good, he was really good. When he was bad, he was really bad. He was good. And it's too bad. I liked Gausman a lot. And so that's sad. But the bigger story in baseball is that there could be a strike or it could be some kind of labor dispute. If things don't come together by the 1st, the 1st is tomorrow. And who knows? Could be a lockout. That wouldn't be good. And it just is a reminder about these disputes. Well, what are these disputes? I mean, the players are making millions upon millions of dollars. It doesn't make sense. Fans, like lowly fans like me, paying what, $30, $40 for a ticket? I don't get press passes. Not anymore. I pay, and now I just think I'm going to watch them on TV. But there's a price you pay for that. I don't know. I just hope that baseball gets its act together, and I hope they're fair to everyone. They're making a lot of money. And because baseball has always had a hard time with the labor dispute. Every labor dispute takes a while for baseball to recover. And if they're going to fight now, it doesn't end up well. And it takes time to recover. Anyway, all right, Emil likes basketball and Emil loves baseball. I'm going to see this documentary about Lowell High School, and I'm going to talk about that a little later on in the week. Tomorrow, World AIDS Day. I will talk about that, of course, because I lived in San Francisco in the 80s. I know how hard that was. And to think that there are no vaccines for HIV/AIDS after all that time, to this day, I'll talk about that tomorrow. That is a sad story. So, hey, thank you for joining me today. Follow us on Twitter at Emil Amok. Twitter, you can watch. Jack Dorsey left a little gizmo where you can ease your finger. At Emil Amok, EMIL AMOK. See more at amok.com. We're here 2 p.m. Pacific Live, Monday through Friday. You know that. I like to say, be here, bang the gong now. Watch us on Facebook at emilguillermo.media. Also on my name, Emil Guillermo, that page. Also on amok.com. Replays on amok.com, where you can also read my column on the ALDEF blog, aldef.org/blog. Oh, ALDEF. Today's Giving Tuesday. You know that. ALDEF has been the home of my Emil Amok column for the last 11 years. Originally started at Asian Week years ago in the ethnic media. ALDEF has made a difference in Asian Americans' lives, from its advocacy on the redistricting issue, fighting for Asian Americans in Texas right now, fighting for Asian Americans all over the East Coast. They're based in New York City. They had a poll, an Asian-specific exit poll in this most recent election. No one knows what Asian Americans think unless they do Asian-specific polls in 5 or 6 languages, and they go out there and target Asian Americans. And does anyone really do that in the mainstream? No, but ALDEF does. Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. They fight for the people at work. They fight for their homes. ALDEF. If you need someone or a group to think about that does good work, they fight for people trying to keep their DACA status alive, the Deferred Action on Childhood Arrivals. If you're looking for an organization, an Asian American organization that helps those who can't help themselves, go to ALDEF, ALDEF.org/ well, it's Giving Tuesday. You'll find the way to give to ALDEF. And now we've come to that portion of the show where, as I said, you get to this part of the show and you get to the mental health part, where I know it's hard. You say to yourself, Do I not belong? Am I good enough? Am I worth it? Did you do something, or is there something, some thought that makes you feel shame? Well, just give your elbows a hug. You belong. You're worth it. Just remember, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here, back tomorrow. Till then, mahal, gita.